Before taking a run at the governor's office last year, Janice Arnold-Jones served 4 terms in the State House of Representatives, serving as one of the loudest voices of opposition on the minority Republican side. Now she's looking for a spot in the majority as a Republican from New Mexico's 1st congressional district. Here's NMIF producer Matt Grubbs.
We have been talking about fundraising just in the last few moments. Let's start there. As you look at the overall numbers in CD1, Democrats and Republicans, Democrats have quite a sizable lead. Do you feel like on the Republican side, some of the money hasn't come out because people are just sort of waiting for a John Barella to come in from last time?
I think that there is some waiting. John is a good friend, and he has a criteria for getting into the race. But Republicans like to make sure they invest their money well, and so until they feel it's set, they will probably stay on the sidelines.
Do you imagine that discrepancy, that money discrepancy, will continue through the coming months, or is it going to tighten up?
I think it'll tighten up. There is one thing that the Republicans will do. We want to take the congressional seat back. We intend to send a Republican to Congress. And so once the field is settled, you will see a lot of support to take that action.
You mentioned John Barella, a friend. If he's in, are you out?
No, you know, when Martin Heinrich decided to vacate his seat, my first call went to John Barella. And John and I talked and talked. And in June, John was, for many, many reasons, unable to make a decision. And I put my hat in the ring at that time. I'm in to win this seat.
As you look at what you're seeing, he's up in Santa Fe. As you look at what you're seeing out of Santa Fe, particularly with respect to jobs, are you seeing enough of a jobs plan from Governor Martinez?
You know, with all due respect, the governor isn't going to make any jobs. She isn't. But she is doing terrific work and taking care of the obstacles to making jobs. She is pulling back on some of the regulations. I have already witnessed some of the pullback on some of the compliance issues. And when I say compliance, I mean paperwork. We have rules that literally choke off risk-taking, and in order to start a business you have to be willing to take a risk, but if 20% of your potential revenue is consumed by compliance and paperwork, hard to take that step. She's doing a very good job in that arena.
When you talk about taking risks, is that people who are starting up businesses, people who are looking to grow, or just big money from big business? Well,
no, taking, you know, it's funny that people say the government, you know, what are you going to do about jobs? Well, the truth is, as a congresswoman, I can't do anything about jobs, but I can make sure that we don't add additional burden to people, even like yourself, who may believe that you can apply your resources and make a profit. And to say that we're going to do anything but to create jobs that make your life miserable is silly. And so that's what we have to do, is we have to pull back the regulations. We have to make sure every regulation, every piece of paper that we request truly has a purpose, and its purpose cannot just be to make another government job.
Is there a point at which you have to become careful that you don't pull those regulations back too much?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and there is I actually have a sort of a formula of the cost of compliance versus the benefit of policy, and there is always there should always be a benefit for that policy, and it should be in relationship to the act of compliance, and neither one should be out of balance. To say that we don't benefit by the fact that we have clean water in our country, oh, of course not. Those are good regulations. But when you force on a business, and let's use our tax code, they would love to be able to spend only 8 hours of their year filing their taxes. I don't know any business that can do that. So different measures.
Okay. As one of the prime examples of something like that is what's going on with the San Juan generating station. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this isn't something that's in the 1st Congressional District, but it really does sort of lay out that conflict between what is good regulation, what is too much regulation, and what should be thrown out altogether. What's your read on that?
Well, I think you nailed it. And there's one other piece. What is too much testing? Over the years, for the clean air regulations, our ability to test has improved exponentially, but there is no relationship to the health outcomes. There should be a one-to-one relationship. But I also feel for P&M that owns this company. The PRC has said they can spend $86 million to improve this plant, but the EPA has come back in and said you shall invest another $345 million to $700 million on a plant with no hope of recovery. How do they make it work? How do they make the numbers work?
When you look at New Mexico's relationship overall to Washington, we've certainly benefited from having the Domenicis and the Bingamans, and you know, even with our last go-round of Congress people, that seniority, and we've gained a lot of money from Washington. It's certainly hard to say we're getting too much money from Washington. What do you feel about that relationship? How is New Mexico doing?
New Mexico is in a very unique position, and let me start by reminding you our state sacrificed for this nation's security way back in the 1940s, and as a result we gave up much of our economy, and so we have by all measure a federal economy, and you know very well there's a 3-to-1 match. For every dollar we send to Washington, 3 come back. It's important right now that whoever represents New Mexico stand up and make the case for what we do. It is often unseen. And let me give you an example. We have airspace. We are able to test things that no other state can test. It's important that whoever represents this district, and I would be honored to do that, can tell that story and explain why it's important. Because the service New Mexico provides to our nation for national defense, national security, and many other things is something that nobody else can do right now. And is that to say we're not going to take an economic hit when the budget cuts come? We are.
It's probably safe to say that everyone will, certainly.
Well, I'm saying, you know, but we are small, and when you have that 3-to-1 ratio, that makes us a remarkable target. And so it will take the entire delegation to make sure that the rest of the nation understands what we contribute.
New Mexico's delegation has done pretty well by many measures in cooperating with each other. You know, it's not often that you see Republicans and Democrats, especially some of the ones that we've had, reach across the aisle toward each other. That's a key component. How do you work with someone who may have very different views, like a Senator Udall?
Well, like anything, just like what you're doing here, Matt. First, you take the time to get to know someone, and you develop trust. You develop a relationship. Senator Udall needs to know what I know, but he also needs to know that I care about his issues. And in that, when I bring something to him or I ask him to support something that I'm doing, he will do so because he trusts my word. That does not happen overnight, and it doesn't happen just because you're elected.
So there you are talking to Senator Udall, and you get a phone call from John Boehner, who says, "We need you in line, Representative Arnold-Jones." What do you do? How do you draw that distinction between working together with the New Mexico delegation and sort of towing the line enough that people in the Republican Party are going to pay attention to you and give you those seats on committees that you want?
You know, and that is the toughest place to be. So there are 2 jobs for the representative from Congressional District 1, and one is to always represent your district, always represent your state. But the job of going to Congress is to also look out for what's best for the United States of America. And having been in a caucus, sometimes you are at odds with your leadership, and what you have to do is, when you're at odds, tell them honestly, tell them where you stand, and don't just give in just because they're your leader, but because there are legitimate reasons not to. Of course, when you're in a caucus, it really helps if you can always be part of the team, but you can't always, and you need to have the courage to do that.
When you look at the power that one congressperson can have, is it a concern to you that you would go there with, by definition, 0 seniority? What committees would you be looking to get on, and what do you think you could do there?
Well, I would like to be on the Armed Forces Committee, and partly because I don't know if you know that I'm a Navy wife.
Yes,
and so my dad was in the Air Force, and I have a real relationship with the military. I have a great understanding of that mission, but I was privileged to be a DOE contractor for 12 years, and understanding how those two entities play in our state and what their role is internationally, I think I would be an asset for the Republicans on that committee. Natural resources, I would love to be on, because New Mexico is now and will be the leader in energy development in our nation, and I would love to tell people how and why we're going to get there. We have the resources. We have 13% of the world's rare earth elements right here in New Mexico. We ought to talk about it, because I don't want to be dependent on China for those elements. So I'm very excited about those two committees, but like any member of Congress, wherever I am assigned, I will serve, and I promise you I will ask questions.
Places like Kirtland, places like Sandia, you kind of referenced those, at least in passing. They're very important assets here. But you look at something like the Kirtland fuel spill and what's going on. That needs to be cleaned up. Lay some blame here. Whose fault is it that it hasn't been cleaned up?
Well, I think right now, as I understand the situation, it may be our own New Mexico Environment Department. There was a movement as the change of administrations happened. There was a plan to go forward, and as the administrations changed, I understand that it kind of got stuck. There is a plan to move forward. I know that the folks at the base would like to start mitigating, that is, literally pumping out the fuel spill so that it doesn't spread any further. I understand that the test wells that have been drilled are showing that it is not spreading particularly fast. But remember, this spill started in 1990. And it started, you know, I wish we were always perfect. We're not. But they put some pipe in the ground on a gravel bed, and it kind of eroded holes in the pipe. And there you are, and nobody knew it. Now, what's exciting, and I look about the pipeline that's proposed to come down through the middle of the United States, our ability through technology to identify a leak is almost instantaneous. So we can do better.
Some more Congressional District 1 issues, specifically Paseo and I-25. Should the government, the federal government, be helping out there and matching some of the dollars that have been set aside by Albuquerque?
Oh, sure, sure. And you may not remember, Representative Teresa Zanetti had carried the bill to pull the capital outlay to actually rework Paseo del Norte. Gosh, was that 2003 or 2004?
It was a while ago.
It was. And there were bills before that. Money was set aside in the capital outlay fund, then it was removed from the capital outlay fund. But it doesn't change the fact that our major bottleneck is Paseo del Norte and I-25. I will do everything that I can in my power to make sure that we move forward and move forward quickly.
Another issue, the downs at Albuquerque, that's still playing out. Are you pleased with the way that that deal went down? Was that contract let fairly?
I wasn't pleased, but I wasn't pleased when we did 30-year bonds for the Native American gaming casinos. And here is my standard. One, I do not think it is appropriate to let a contract for 25 years without review when it is taxpayer dollars involved. And that's the first part that I do not particularly like about this contract. Do I understand that they did go out to a bid process? I thought it was excessively short. My experience in the DOE community is when our RFPs are let, 30 days is an exceptionally short turnaround for such a large contract. So those things are markers that make me nervous. I don't have any other questions beyond that, but enough to make me look.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to get to here, Dan Lewis is a pastor, and certainly God is a part of his politics, just sort of almost by default or by definition. Where do you stand? Where does your faith play a role in your politics?
Oh my goodness, it's every day. I am a Christ follower, I am a Christian, and I every day wake up to a little saying that says, what do my actions and reactions say that I believe about Jesus Christ? And that's my standard of behavior. But if you are a Christ follower, then all of your behavior should be moderated by those rules that we have been given. And so if I disagree with you, my first choice is not to yell at you, because that's contrary to my beliefs. My first choice is to go to you, and the Bible says, in love, in kindness, to tell you, I do not agree with you. Because yelling is never the first choice. So it's every day.
In Washington, it's a particularly contentious environment. Can you go there and keep that view? It must be tricky to get to sort of not push that back.
You know, Matt, the reason that I think I would be such an excellent representative for New Mexico and Washington is that I work to agreement. And in order to get agreement, I understand that if we're choosing up teams and pushing them against the wall and simply throwing stuff into the middle, well, chances are I'm in the middle, it's landing on my head, and I don't like it. And so I have to find a way to bring those two groups together. And it comes from trust, it comes from relationship building, and it comes from helping people be able to count on what I say. And I think we need a lot more bridge builders.
Janice Arnold-Jones, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cut off the heat, basically, to some of the more remote and vulnerable towns, communities in our state. You know, if portions of Albuquerque go without heat, there are places we can go.